The world has seen its share of conflicts, but some rivalries carry the weight of history, the risk of escalation, and the power to shake the entire planet. The tensions between Iran and Israel are exactly that. This is not just a regional dispute. It's a complex, dangerous standoff, one that has simmered for decades, defined by ideology, survival, and global alliances. But today, that long-standing tension feels different. More immediate, more volatile, and far more capable of sparking a global crisis than many dare to admit. From covert operations and cyber attacks to nuclear threats and proxy wars, the friction between these two nations has evolved into a high-stakes chess match with consequences reaching far beyond the Middle East. For ordinary people in Tel Aviv and Tehran, the fear is real. For global leaders in Washington, Brussels, Moscow, and Beijing, the situation demands careful calculation. And for history reminds us that regional conflicts, left unchecked, have the power to ignite global disasters. The Iran-Israel conflict sits on that razor's edge. And as tensions escalate, the world holds its breath, asking, could this confrontation spark something far greater? Something that drags other nations into its wake? Something that history, time and again, has warned us about. In this documentary, we'll explore the facts, the history, the global implications, and most importantly, the lessons humanity often forgets. We'll dive deep into how this rivalry began, how it evolved, and why it matters more now than ever before. Stay with us as we unpack not just the headlines, but the human stories, the geopolitical chess game, and the potential consequences that could shape the future of our world. This is more than politics. It's about peace, conflict, and the dangerous thin line that separates the two. To understand how today's Iran-Israel tensions reached this critical point, we must look back to a history marked by shifting alliances, political upheaval, and growing distrust. It might surprise some to know that decades ago, Iran and Israel were not bitter enemies. In the years before 1979, the two nations quietly cooperated behind the scenes. Israel saw Iran as a key regional player, and Iran, under the Shah, engaged with Israel economically and diplomatically despite broader Arab opposition. But history is never static. The turning point came in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution. The fall of the Shah and the rise of the Islamic Republic transformed Iran's foreign policy and its view of Israel. The new leadership, driven by a mix of religious ideology and anti-Western sentiment, declared Israel an illegitimate state, calling for its end and framing itself as a defender of the Palestinian cause. From that moment, the hostility began to harden. Over the following decades, this animosity deepened, fueled by regional wars, political rhetoric, and Iran's growing support for groups hostile to Israel, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and various Palestinian factions. Meanwhile, Israel viewed Iran's nuclear ambitions as an existential threat, one that could tip the balance of power in the Middle East and endanger its very survival. The two nations became locked in a dangerous cycle: covert operations, cyber attacks, proxy conflicts across the region. And while their militaries have not engaged in direct, large-scale warfare, their shadow war has intensified with consequences rippling across the globe. What started as a political rivalry has evolved into one of the most dangerous, complex standoffs of the modern era. Now, as global powers weigh in, as nuclear threats reemerge, and as diplomatic efforts falter, the world faces a sobering question. Will history repeat itself, transforming regional hostility into a global crisis? Or can humanity learn from the past, recognizing the fragile threads that hold back catastrophe? The answer lies in understanding not just where this rivalry began, but where it's headed. Few words carry as much global weight as nuclear. For Israel, the idea of a nuclear-armed Iran is more than a political disagreement, it's a red line, a matter of survival. Iran has long insisted that its nuclear program is peaceful, aimed at energy production and medical research. But Israel, along with many Western nations, remains unconvinced. Years of covert operations, intelligence leaks, and international inspections have fueled suspicions that Iran seeks more than just peaceful nuclear technology, that it aims to develop weapons capable of reshaping the balance of power in the Middle East. For Israel, a nation with a small landmass and historical trauma rooted in existential threats, the possibility of a hostile neighbor possessing nuclear arms is unacceptable. This fear has driven much of Israel's policy from behind the scenes sabotage of Iranian facilities to high profile diplomatic campaigns aimed at preventing Iran from reaching nuclear capability. The 2015 Iran nuclear deal, known formally as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action JCPOA, sought to contain the crisis. Under the deal, Iran agreed to limit its nuclear activities, reduce uranium stockpiles, and allow international inspections in exchange for relief from crippling economic sanctions. For a moment, the world exhaled, believing a pathway to peace, however fragile, had been found. But peace, history shows, is rarely permanent. In 2018, the United States, under President Trump, withdrew from the deal, citing flaws and Iran's continued regional aggression. Since then, tensions have soared. Iran has resumed higher-level uranium enrichment. Israel has ramped up warnings and actions aimed at stopping Iran's progress. The fragile balance has eroded, replaced by open threats, clandestine operations, and fears of direct conflict. And the world watches, aware that if diplomacy fails, the consequences could extend far beyond the Middle East. Nuclear weapons are not just tools of destruction. They are political levers, global game changers, capable of igniting wars that drag in world powers, destabilize markets, and alter the course of history. The Iran-Israel rivalry sits at that dangerous crossroads, a place where decisions made in secret rooms or on public stages can ripple across the globe. The question the world faces now is urgent. Can diplomacy prevail? Or is the world inching closer to a conflict that history has warned us about time and time again? The clock is ticking. The stakes have never been higher. When most think of conflict, they imagine armies clashing head-on, borders invaded, and battles broadcast to the world. But the Iran-Israel rivalry rarely plays out so visibly. Instead, this confrontation unfolds in the shadows through covert operations, cyber attacks, and proxy wars that stretch far beyond the borders of either nation. In Lebanon, Hezbollah, a powerful Iranian-backed militant group, remains one of Israel's most immediate threats. With thousands of rockets pointed at Israeli cities, Hezbollah acts as a frontline extension of Iran's regional influence. In Syria, Iran has worked to expand its military presence, building bases and supply lines dangerously close to Israeli territory. Israel, in turn, has conducted hundreds of airstrikes aimed at disrupting these efforts, targeting weapons shipments, military installations, and infrastructure linked to Iran's ambitions. Yemen, Iraq, and even parts of Africa have become arenas where Iran's influence and Israel's countermeasures quietly collide. Then there is the cyber realm, an invisible battlefield where attacks on infrastructure, intelligence systems, and even nuclear facilities occur behind the scenes. Some of the most sophisticated cyber attacks in history, like the Stuxnet virus that crippled Iran's nuclear centrifuges, have been linked to this ongoing digital war. Each of these hidden conflicts adds fuel to the broader crisis, keeping both nations locked in a dangerous pattern of retaliation, escalation, and secrecy. But while these operations may seem distant to the average person, their consequences are anything but isolated. Proxy conflicts have a way of spiraling, drawing in allies, destabilizing entire regions, and triggering crises that cross oceans and borders. For global powers like the United States, Russia, and China, these indirect battles present complex challenges. Diplomatic relations, military strategies, and economic interests all become entangled in the growing web of tensions. And for ordinary people, civilians in cities like Beirut, Tel Aviv, or Damascus, the cost is personal. Families live under the constant shadow of rockets, sanctions, and the uncertainty of conflict. It's a reminder that modern warfare is rarely contained, that rivalries like Iran and Israel's can stretch across continents, affecting millions who have no part in the political games played at the highest levels. The hidden front lines are real, the risk of escalation is constant, and the world, whether it realizes it or not, remains a silent participant in this dangerous standoff. The deeper question remains, can this shadow war be contained? Or is it only a matter of time before it explodes into open conflict with global consequences none can ignore? The Iran-Israel conflict isn't isolated. It's a thread woven into the fabric of global geopolitics, a dangerous tension point on the world's chessboard, where superpowers quietly move their pieces. At the heart of this complex game sits the United States. For decades, America has been Israel's closest ally, providing military aid, intelligence cooperation, and diplomatic support. Successive U.S. administrations have viewed Israel as a strategic partner, a democratic foothold in a volatile region. But America's involvement extends beyond friendship. It's deeply tied to containing Iran, preventing nuclear proliferation, and maintaining stability in global energy markets. On the other side, Iran has cultivated relationships with nations opposed to Western influence, forming partnerships that complicate the crisis further. Russia, for example, has strengthened its ties with Tehran, supplying advanced weapons systems, cooperating on energy projects, and aligning strategically in conflicts like Syria. China, too, has stepped into the picture, signing massive economic agreements with Iran, providing an alternative to Western sanctions, and expanding its influence in the Middle East. The European Union walks a more cautious line, striving to salvage diplomatic efforts like the Iran nuclear deal, while balancing relationships with both Israel and the broader Arab world. This global entanglement means the Iran-Israel rivalry is never just about two nations. It's a high-stakes geopolitical puzzle where every move risks triggering broader consequences. If Israel strikes Iran's nuclear facilities, how will Russia respond? If Iran closes critical shipping lanes, how will global markets react? If diplomacy collapses, how far will the ripple effects spread? History offers sobering lessons. Localized conflicts like those in the Balkans before World War I or the Middle East wars of the 20th century have ignited chain reactions, drawing distant nations into devastating global crises. Today, with modern technology, advanced weaponry, and deeply interconnected economies, the risks are even higher. Superpowers may posture from a distance, but their interests, their alliances, and their rivalries are tightly woven into the fabric of the Iran-Israel standoff. The danger lies not just in direct confrontation, but in the miscalculations, proxy escalations, and unintended consequences that can spiral far beyond anyone's control. As history teaches, global crises rarely erupt in isolation. They build slowly through complex games of power, until a single spark ignites a fire none can contain. The world now watches, holding its breath, hoping the pieces on the board remain in place, and that history does not repeat itself. History rarely repeats itself exactly, but its patterns are impossible to ignore. The world has seen how localized tensions, underestimated by many, can erupt into global crises reshaping nations, destroying lives, and altering the course of humanity. The Iran-Israel conflict, for all its complexity, fits that dangerous mold. Consider the spark that ignited World War I, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914. A regional incident, seemingly isolated, but within weeks, the world plunged into a catastrophic war fueled by alliances, rivalries, and miscalculations. The Middle East has long been a flashpoint for similar dangers. The Arab-Israeli wars of the 20th century, the 1979 Iranian Revolution, the U.S. invasions of Iraq, each event began with regional grievances but produced global ripples, economic shocks, refugee crises, geopolitical realignments. The lessons are clear. Conflicts that seem distant can destabilize entire continents. Regional rivalries, when ignored or mishandled, can explode beyond their borders. Superpower involvement often escalates rather than resolves underlying tensions. Today, the Iran-Israel standoff carries those same warning signs. Nuclear weapons in the conversation, a historic red line. Proxy wars stretching across the Middle East, echoing Cold War dynamics. Superpower entanglement with the U.S., Russia, China, and Europe all deeply invested. Economic vulnerabilities with global energy, supplies, and trade routes at risk. What history teaches is sobering, yet vital. The world often miscalculates. Leaders underestimate how fast tensions can escalate. Populations believe distant conflicts won't affect them until they do. But history also teaches that diplomacy, courage, and leadership can diffuse even the most volatile situations. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 stands as proof. The world stood on the brink of nuclear war, yet through back-channel negotiations and the willingness to compromise, disaster was narrowly avoided. The current Iran-Israel situation demands the same urgency, the same recognition of risk, and the same global cooperation to pull back from the edge. The past holds lessons written in the blood and losses of generations before us. The question facing humanity now is simple, yet profound. Will we heed those lessons, or are we destined to repeat them? Beyond the headlines, beyond the speeches and political calculations, lies the human reality millions of people living day by day beneath the looming shadow of the Iran-Israel conflict. In the bustling streets of Tel Aviv, life moves forward, cafes filled, children playing, technology startups thriving. Yet beneath the surface, a constant tension lingers. Sirens, bomb shelters, military service, reminders that peace remains fragile. Across the border in Tehran, families navigate a different struggle. Decades of sanctions have battered the economy. Young people, educated and ambitious, face limited opportunities. Many dream not of war, but of connection, a future beyond isolation and fear. In Lebanon, civilians in towns along the southern border brace for the next flare-up between Hezbollah and Israel. In Syria, communities shattered by civil war face yet another layer of uncertainty as foreign powers entrench themselves on their soil. Ordinary people, whose only desire is safety, stability, and hope, often become the quiet casualties of geopolitical rivalries. Their voices are rarely heard in the global debate, but their stories reveal the true cost of prolonged tension, families separated by conflict and borders. Economies weakened by uncertainty and sanctions, Generations growing up under the constant threat of violence, dreams of peace overshadowed by political gamesmanship. Yet, amid the fear, there is resilience. Israeli and Iranian activists advocating for dialogue, often at great personal risk. Grassroots peace initiatives striving to bridge divides. Young voices refusing to accept the narrative that conflict is inevitable. These human stories remind us that beneath the politics, beneath the military posturing, lies a shared humanity, one that desires peace, opportunity, and dignity. It's easy to view conflicts like Iran and Israel's as distant, abstract, until you see the faces, hear the voices, feel the daily impact on lives that mirror your own. The world often debates strategy, alliances, and weapons, yet forgets the people caught in the middle. Their quiet courage, their persistent hope, are perhaps the greatest reasons to believe that even in the darkest of conflicts, peace remains possible. But their future depends not just on their resilience, but on the choices of leaders, the wisdom of history, and the willingness of the world to step back from the brink. The Iran-Israel conflict is more than a standoff between two nations. It is a reflection of the world's greatest challenge, finding stability in an era defined by uncertainty, power struggles, and fragile peace. The situation remains dangerous. Nuclear ambitions, proxy wars, superpower rivalries, all the ingredients for escalation are present. One miscalculation, one act of aggression, one moment of weakness could ignite a chain reaction with devastating global consequences. And yet, history also teaches us that within crisis lies opportunity. Diplomacy, though battered, is not dead. Back-channel negotiations continue. Global powers, however divided, understand the cost of full-scale war. Regional actors, weary of endless tension, quietly seek pathways to coexistence. The question is whether the world has the vision, the leadership, and the collective will to pull back from the edge. For ordinary people, Israelis, Iranians, and millions across the Middle East, peace is not an abstract debate. It is the hope for a normal life, for safety, prosperity, and dignity. The road ahead is uncertain, but not predetermined. Leaders face choices: escalate or de-escalate, confront or negotiate, fuel division or invest in fragile hope. The global community faces choices: ignore distant conflicts until they explode, or engage constructively to diffuse tensions. And each of us, in our understanding, our conversations, and our awareness, shapes how these events unfold. Could the Iran-Israel conflict spark a global crisis? History shows it's possible. But history also shows that humanity, when it listens to its better angels, can avoid catastrophe, can build uneasy, imperfect, but lasting peace. The world has walked this tightrope before. The question now is, will we stumble into crisis or step toward understanding? The clock is ticking. The decisions made in the coming months and years will shape not only the Middle East, but the fate of global peace itself. This is the moment to learn from history, to value dialogue over destruction, and to recognize that even in the darkest times, peace remains within reach if the world dares to choose it.